Hey, what's up, everybody? Scott Hawksworth at recordingexcellence.com back with you. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about signal flow. Now, signal flow is a very, very important concept to understand in audio and in mixing. And I'm going to start getting into some terms here and really getting into some mixing jargon. So again, if you're confused about anything or unsure, feel free to hit pause and either, wind it back a little bit or pull up one of those glossaries and see, and read the term and make sure you fully understand it. But anyway, getting back to signal flow. So I think of signal flow, or I like to think about it, as almost like a map or a GPS route. And if you're going from point A to point B, it's just signal flow is just how you get there. And all the different turns and everything that you take in order to get there. Now, in this analogy, I would think about maybe if you were on a trip from Chicago to St. Louis. You would probably put your destination, your St. Louis destination, into your GPS, and then it would plan a route for you. And then maybe, let's say you might, during your trip, have to fill up for gas, so you might take stop at a rest stop, or you might want to have lunch, so you might stop at a McDonald's on the way. Or you may say, hey, there's a really cool attraction that's halfway here between St. Louis and Chicago, and I'd like to take that. So then that would take you out of your way. But then you'd come back onto the highway and be back on your way to your destination. I wanted to just show you this graphic. So we've talked about inputs and outputs. Input, where are you coming from? Output, where are you going? But then we have some other terms here, and I wanted to cover them. So you had this idea of inserts. Now, when talking about signal flow, an insert is really, in that analogy, like you're pulling off to that rest stop. You're still on the highway, but you're just pulling off to have something, to go to the bathroom or whatever. Well, an insert is often used to put things like compressors or EQ or even some effects right into that signal path. So, you have your audio signal going along and you're saying, okay, I'm putting a plug-in right here on the signal path. So think of it as just a pit stop, but you're still on the highway. Then you have this idea of sends and buses. Now, this can get a little complex, but sends, I think of as the detours. So a send is you're saying to that signal, okay, you're on this highway, but I'm going to give you a little detour. I'm going to send you over here. So your destination is your final output here. Well, I'm going to send you on a little detour. So it's going to that attraction, whatever it might be. A bus, similarly, I like to think of as a collection of things. So it's kind of a collector. So a send is like, I'm taking thy signal and you're okay, you're going over here, you're going over here. A bus is like, okay, I've got a whole group here of signals I've collected, and we can do something with them. So it might be if you went on a detour, and then if you want to stay with a bus analogy, maybe you did a little tourist thing around that detour. You got that bus and you did your thing and you saw the sights, and then, okay, you're going to get back onto the main highway. So if one of those tourist trap towns, you might get on a trolley maybe. Maybe that's a better way to describe it. So that's kind of what sends and buses are and how they kind of work. Then you have this idea of pre-fader and post-fader. Now, a fader, you should know, and if you don't, that's okay. But a fader is, you turn it up and down. That's just your basic volume control. There's lots of faders. Pre-fader, that's do the effects happen before, you turn it up and down, and does turning it down affect what happens to the signal? Or post-fader, does that mean that if you turn that fader all the way down, you're going to bring that signal to zero, so anything that happens to it is going to not matter? So if we're talking about reverb, for example, and you have your signal and it's going along your input, and then you want to send it to, you want to send it to an auxiliary bus, and add some reverb to it, and then bring it back. Well, if it's pre-fader, then that will happen, and if you turn the fader down, your bus might have some send to an output, and you can still hear it. But if it's post-fader, then it's not going to happen until it goes through that fader there. Then you turn it down, nothing's going to happen. You're not going to hear any reverb. So, okay. And then, of course, we have some pan here and things like that. Metering, too. That's an important thing to understand with your signal. If you're metering pre-fader, that's going to show you, what are your levels before you start doing all these kinds of, before you turn your fader down, and what are your levels after.